Hey everyone, it's Dylan with SeaTee Aquatics, and this is the Complete Maintenance Guide. This video is a compilation of all of the videos I've created on maintenance, put together in an order to hopefully help you understand everything you need to do in your saltwater fish tank as far as maintenance goes for an entire year or for the entire life of the fish tank. Hope you enjoy the video.
Generally speaking, maintaining a saltwater aquarium is not that difficult in my opinion. On the day-to-day, you don't need to spend a whole lot of time with your tank, but there are things that you need to do daily that do take up a little bit of time. With that being said, as long as you have about 10 minutes a day, sometimes even less, you have enough time to keep a saltwater fish tank. The reason for this is just like any other pet. It's a living environment or a living creature, and they do require some attention. With that being said, I think 10 minutes a day, or like I said, less in many cases, is pretty minimal for a pet to keep at home. With that being said, let's move in to the things that I like to do every day. The first thing that I always like to do with my tank is observe. Simply observing your tank every day, you'll start to notice changes that occur within the tank. The changes that occur in the tank will be noticed by you much quicker if you're looking at the tank every day, even if it's just for a couple of minutes, versus if you're looking at the tank only once a week. If you only look at your tank once a week, things can get out of hand quickly, and without any observation, they can become detrimental before you've even seen them. Furthermore, the more time you can spend enjoying and observing your tank, in my opinion, the better. The second most important thing to do every single day is to feed your fish. Just a simple sprinkle of pellets can be enough, and even using an auto feeder can help to eliminate this as one of your personal daily tasks and put it onto a machine. There are cheap auto feeders for as low as $20 or $30, and some more expensive ones that can be quite expensive depending on whether or not they feed frozen or just pellet food. With that being said, feeding is something that you can do without a device, and it can be something as simple as, for example, taking your cup of food and putting a scoop in the tank. We have talked about feeding and nutrients in another video, so I'm not going to go into too much detail in this one, but just note that it is important to feed your fish on a regular basis. And that's why I included it on this daily maintenance list. The next most important thing that I like to check daily is key parameters. The three key parameters, in my opinion, are going to be temperature, salinity, and pH. Now, as I've mentioned before with feeding, we've talked about all of these in other videos, which you'll be able to find in links in the description, but checking these daily is super critical, as if any of these go off for any reason, for extended periods of time, they can become detrimental to the system. In most cases, they should be in line, so checking is as simple as sticking your probe in the tank or looking at a thermometer that's already stuck on the wall. But regardless, checking these is important because if you notice they're off, you can act quickly and save the inhabitants of the reef. In stocked reefs, I also think that it's super important to check alkalinity on a daily basis. Checking alkalinity will let you know if your dosing levels are accurate for the tank and whether or not you need to increase or decrease the dosage going forwards. If you notice that your alkalinity had a large swing, you can help to correct it quicker so that the coral are not shocked. Next, I like to do an equipment check. This is very quick and very simple, and typically kind of takes place in the observation stage, but it's basically just observing to make sure that all of your equipment is working as intended. If for some reason you notice that something is not working correctly, you can then fix it from there. If you notice that pumps are starting to build up any algae buildup, you can make note to clean them during your next weekly or monthly cleaning. Or if you notice anything else that may be starting to go slightly out of whack, you can take note of it and make sure to fix it when the time comes, or, as I said, fix it immediately if it's required. Last but not least, I would like to talk about topping off your tank with fresh water. This kind of goes hand in hand with salinity, which we've talked about again in a previous video. So if you would like to check that out, you can click the link here. I do need to make sure that the water level is stable and that the salinity is stable. And after checking all of my parameters, as I've mentioned, I can then top off the tank to help with the water level due to evaporation. I do like to keep a jug of RO water on the floor next to my tank before topping off. During certain winter months when it gets very dry where I live, I may need to top off the tank twice a day. And during summer months when it becomes more humid, I may be able to get by with topping it off every other day. But it's something that's super important to keep an eye on because again, as water evaporates, the salinity may go up. So that's why checking the salinity and topping off go hand in hand. Now remember, while daily tasks are important, it's also critical to remember that there are weekly and monthly tasks that need to be performed as well. So this is not everything that you will do throughout the fish tank's life cycle. We will go through what I like to do on a weekly basis in our next video, followed by monthly, and then any other types of maintenance followed by that.
In our last video, we talked about daily maintenance. On top of daily maintenance, weekly maintenance is a critical aspect in keeping a healthy and thriving reef system. Here are some of the weekly tasks that I perform in my reef tank. Number 1, the first thing that I like to do on a weekly basis is a nutrient check. A nutrient check involves checking nitrate and phosphate in the reef tank. Knowing and understanding your nitrate and phosphate levels is a key in understanding whether you have a healthy tank or not. If the levels of nitrates and phosphates become too high, doing a water change is a good way to help dilute these numbers down. There are other ways to dilute these numbers or reduce them, such as using chemical filtration. Some other key nutrients that are important to understand and know about are ammonia and nitrite. But at this point in our tank, you shouldn't be dealing with high levels of this, if any of it at all. With that being said, after doing a nutrient check, the second thing that I like to do is do a water change and perform an algae cleaning. This part's pretty self-explanatory. You clean off algae from the glass and anywhere on the rocks that you can reach using either a toothbrush or your siphon, and perform a water change by removing 10 to 20% of the water from your tank and replacing it with fresh, clean salt water. Make sure that the parameters of the salt water match that of your system in terms of salinity, temperature, alkalinity, calcium, and magnesium levels. Your nitrates and phosphates should be 0 in your fresh, clean salt water. Another thing that's great to do while performing your water change is doing a gravel or sand vacuum. Using the siphon, you can simply insert it into your sand or gravel to help remove any detritus out of the tank that has built up in your sand. Now, in a lot of my tanks, I like to do bare bottom. It's still good to try and remove as much of the detritus off the bottom as possible, but having bare bottom helps to keep the tank much cleaner. The next thing that I like to do is an equipment check. I like to check over all of the equipment in the tank, from lights to heaters to pumps, in order to make sure that everything is working as intended. Over time, deposits are going to build up on your pumps, and it becomes crucial to clean them, which we'll talk about in our monthly maintenance video. But at this point, it is still crucial to check all of the equipment and make sure that it's functioning properly, because if you notice that anything is askew, you can try and act before anything detrimental happens. The last thing that I like to do on a weekly basis is check my additive levels. In a lot of my tanks, we have a dosing system, and there's a reservoir for all of our additives, such as all-for-reef or any calcium, magnesium, alkalinity products that we may be adding to the tank. It's important to check to make sure that these levels are topped off on a weekly basis in order to make sure that the dosing system never runs out. Consistent and thorough weekly maintenance is key to preventing water quality issues and ensuring the well-being of your saltwater aquarium inhabitants. It is also a potential opportunity to address any problems before they become major life-threatening issues to the system. Monthly maintenance includes tasks for our saltwater aquarium that are super critical, but performed less frequently than something that we would perform in daily or weekly maintenance that we talked about in previous weeks. Here are some of the key monthly maintenance tasks that I like to perform in my saltwater aquarium to keep it thriving. The first is to perform a deep cleaning. This kind of goes hand in hand with our weekly water change, but once a month, I like to get even more thorough and super clean the tanks. On top of just removing algae and cleaning the glass, I like to try and scrub the rocks a little bit and vacuum out the gravel the best as possible. I also like to get into the filters and remove any detritus from the sump or from the rear chamber of the aquarium. This added detail in the cleaning
based on a weekly water change helps to ensure that nitrate and phosphate levels aren't going to build up in pockets in the rocks and in hard to reach places. I also like to use a pump to help blow out any detritus from pockets within the rocks. On top of just cleaning the sump, I like to go through and make sure that I replace any media that may be expired or overused and clean the filter socks and replace them. This can be done weekly as well, but on a monthly basis, it's super important to clean out every part of your filter and sump and replace anything that's been used up. After a more thorough cleaning, I also like to go and do a more thorough equipment check. I'll also remove any equipment from the tank that may be dirty or starting to experience buildup and clean it using some citric acid. You can let your pumps soak in citric acid for an hour and then use a toothbrush to clean them off. This will help to remove any coralline algae buildup or any precipitation buildup from additives near maybe your return pump or a power head. This is also a good point to check heaters and lights to make sure that everything is working as it should. This is also a good time to inspect your livestock. This is something that we've talked about in daily maintenance, but now we can be a little bit more hands-on. If any coral's starting to get overgrown, now is a good time to trim it back and create some frags. It's also a good time to inspect stuff like your cleanup crew. Over time, cleanup crew tends to die off. So I like to inspect it on a monthly basis, and I will add more cleanup crew members if needed. At this point, you should have thoroughly inspected and cleaned your entire tank and decided whether or not you need to add anything or make any changes. Monthly maintenance allows you to address any aspects of your reef aquarium that may not need as much attention as weekly tasks, but are still essential in creating a happy, healthy, and thriving ecosystem. And they are essential for long-term success. It's also important to remember that the specific needs for your aquarium may be different than mine or anybody else's. So it's important to tailor these tasks to the needs of your specific aquarium. Regular monitoring and adjustments are the key to overall success in creating a happy, healthy, and thriving ecosystem. So what is miscellaneous maintenance? Miscellaneous maintenance is any of the maintenance procedures that you want to perform on your tank that don't happen regularly or as regularly as, let's say, daily, weekly, or monthly maintenance. The miscellaneous maintenance is just as important as all of the other types of maintenance, but like I said, it happens a little bit less frequently, and sometimes certain pieces of maintenance aren't necessarily scheduled where it's every 3 months or every 6 months, but more so kind of on an as-needed basis. During our normal daily, weekly, and monthly maintenance, a lot of our maintenance procedures are simple checks in order to make sure that equipment is running properly. If during any one of these checks you notice that a piece of equipment isn't functioning properly, or maybe there is some algae or dirt buildup, maybe even dust buildup on something like some lights, it is important to address these as soon as possible and to make sure that your equipment is cleaned regularly in order to make sure that your tank is running efficiently. Certain devices, such as pumps and heaters, eventually wear out over time, no matter how much maintenance you perform on them. Again, we're in a saltwater environment here, which can be very corrosive on a lot of the parts in the tank. I've had many heaters malfunction over the years, and I have safeguards in place to make sure that the tank is not affected if a heater were to malfunction. And then I get alerts on my phone that will let me know that the temperature is going down, if that's the case, so that I know to replace heaters. But these are just fail-safes. It is important to check your devices, like I said, regularly in order to make sure that they are all working properly. And if you notice that anything is starting to get old or wear out, having backups on hand or ordering something as a replacement before a problem arises can be super beneficial instead of waiting for a problem to occur and having it be detrimental. I have a bunch of fail-safes in place so that if a piece of equipment were to fail on me, I would be notified immediately and it shouldn't hurt the tank in any way. But that's also why it can be important to have backups on hand or be ready to replace equipment as needed. Another thing that you should be checking regularly is the growth state of your corals. Some corals are going to grow faster than others, so if you ever notice that a piece of coral is growing too close to other coral, or that it's just getting maybe too close to the glass, or starting to impede the tank flow in some way, trimming back the coral and creating frags can be another piece of miscellaneous maintenance that doesn't necessarily happen on a regular basis, but can happen more so on an as-needed basis. Something else that I typically will do every 3 to 6 months is to reevaluate the cleanup crew population. Cleanup crew is known to slowly dwindle down in numbers over time, and so it's important to monitor this, and as the numbers get lower, to increase the population in order to help keep the tanks as clean as they can be. Something else that I like to check regularly and replace as needed are my RO filters. When working with saltwater, most people are going to make their own saltwater using reverse osmosis water and mixing their salt in. They'll also be topping off their tank with more reverse osmosis water. So keeping an eye on the filters and replacing them as they get dirty becomes super critical. As mentioned, inspecting and cleaning equipment is super important. Even checking for stuff like dust in the fans of lights can help to save from the headache of a light failing in the future. Typically, I find that the dust doesn't build up in my lights fast enough within just 1 month, but it's something to check regularly, at least monthly, and to clean as needed as you notice any dust building up. The same goes for heaters, power heads, pumps, and any equipment in the tank. Over time, they're going to build up deposits of coralline algae, maybe some detritus will get stuck into them, algae, and a bunch of other stuff, so it's important to clean these regularly. Typically I like to do this on a monthly basis, but it's also important to inspect the equipment to prevent catastrophic failures. Something like heaters, over time, from my experience, always end up breaking. Even the best heaters, they may last longer than the cheap ones, but eventually they do end up failing. Checking these regularly to make sure all seals and glass, if you're using glass heaters, are intact, and make sure that the heating elements are working properly. Having backup heaters on hand can be super important, as replacing them quickly can be the difference between nothing happening to the tank and everything in the tank dying, potentially. Replacing heaters on a regular basis also becomes super important. This isn't something that you need to do monthly. I would personally recommend replacing heaters every year to year and a half, as even though they may still have some life in them, these heaters can be used as backups after they've been used extensively. And that way you can ensure that your tank is always going to be heated correctly and staying safe, avoiding any electrical shocks or other issues. Another thing that's important to check regularly is the seals on your tank. Over time, seals do tend to wear out. I've personally never had a seal break on a tank, but from what I have read online and seen, seals over time, the silicone becomes more brittle, and there's always a chance that some water can start to get through. Some manufacturers are known to only last 5 years, where other tanks may last 10 to 20 years. That all depends on, again, the manufacturer. So it's important to just keep an eye on your seals and make sure that nothing is getting damaged or looking like it may be ready to leak. If you notice that a seal is getting thin or brittle or starting to come off of the tank, you can be a little bit more proactive, potentially drain the tank down partially to fix the seal, rather than at some point the seal failing and you finding out by your house or office building flooding, which can cause a lot more damage and be a lot more detrimental than just losing the fish in your tank. So checking seals becomes critical. Doing these checks and following the miscellaneous maintenance guide will help you to stay on top of the aspects of your reef tank that may not require as much attention, but are still super critical in your long-term and overall success in keeping your tanks. Remember that the specific needs of any reef aquarium may vary, so the frequency at which you do anything in miscellaneous maintenance can greatly vary as well.
So there you go. In today's video, you got to see everything that I do as far as maintenance goes throughout the life of the fish tank. Hope you enjoyed what you saw, and remember, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications to join us on our journey through the sea. Or drop a comment below and let us know what you thought of the video. Thanks for watching.